Hello, my studio teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast with me, Christina Whitlock. If you don't know it by now, I pride myself in being your anytime piano teacher friend. This show is here for you whenever you need it, providing a necessary dose of teacher camaraderie because we all need it. Hey, I need it too. I am in a season where I am struggling to keep caught up with my real life friends. And I'm working on that, but it does my heart so much good to spend time with you each week here on the airwaves. Those of you who keep up with me via social media and email and all the things make this little project of mine all the better. I guess I just wanted to open up today's episode with a big thank you to you for being part of my world here. Okay, let's get on with the show. You are listening to episode 157 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Cheers to what's working in this season. So, there are these two questions that I feel we can ask ourselves as teachers and as people that make an enormous difference in our quality of life. What are these two questions, you ask? Well, it doesn't get any simpler than this, friends. They are what's working and what's not working. I know. These are laughably simple questions, but we also tend to get busy doing our day to day things and we fail to take time to name them. And if you don't know this by now, naming things that tend to go unnamed is a huge part of my approach to teaching and to life, apparently. I have made these questions a regular part of my self reflection routine for years. And when I say reflection routine, I don't mean some elaborate ritual that I take part in. I keep it really simple. I have two places that I track reflections. One is a note in my phone. So, at the start of a new month, I will jot down things that are working for me and things that aren't. These could be studio and teaching related, but also observations about life in general. And because I do this fairly regularly, I have kind of trained myself to pay attention to these things in my day to day life. But even when you are paying attention, there is something to be said about the power of writing these things down. I think that's really important. So, I mentioned I have two methods of tracking reflections. So, one is just the Notes app on my phone. The other is a printable that I designed and then redesigned last year that gives me a place to track all of my studio notes. It's free for anyone who wants it. You can just visit the link in the show notes or head to christinawhitlock.com/free and look for Studio Reflections Printable. But on that sheet, I have room for general studio notes like order books for Johnny or prepare extra work on intervals for Susie. I will also write down quote worthy things that my students say and whatever else I feel like I need to remember. But I also include something that I call the win of the week and the cringe of the week, which are just funnier ways of saying what worked and what didn't. I use one of these sheets every week, and then I review them once a month or so that I can identify trends and areas for improvement. A lot of those observations from the reflections sheet are what ends up in the note that I keep in my phone. So, anyway, I point all of this out because I want you to know that self reflection does not have to be complicated. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about how they take themselves on a solo retreat once a quarter to some scenic location and then they journal all of these elaborate ideas. And I mean, if you can swing that, then do it. But that is not working for me in this season. See what I did there? Instead, I track ideas during the lessons themselves on that Studio Reflections printable, and occasionally I add things to notes in my phone. It's just that easy, but it also really helps me stay connected to what is working for me and what isn't. Okay, so anyway, because this is such a life changing practice for me, I thought I would live by example and share with you 5 things that are working for me in this, my current season of life. If you want to know what is not working for me in this season, you will have to check out my One Thought Thursday later this week because that's where I'm sharing that list. So make sure you're signed up for the email list at christinawhitlock.com/subscribe. Okay. Just to establish what my current season of life is, here are the essentials because this matters. So, I'm 41 years old. I have 2 daughters and a husband who I adore, and my studio is in my home where I teach 40 students in private and group lessons throughout the week. I've been teaching for 28 years and it's February. Okay, that's the season I am in. So, with that established, let's get to my list of 5 things that are working for me these days. Okay, first up, light dinners. This feels silly to share, but it's also applicable for so many of us. Okay, we all know that dinner can be a real conundrum for piano teachers, right? We tend to live in the land of casseroles that we can throw in the oven between students, or slow cooker meals that can basically be ready when we're finished working, since many of us lack the time or energy to do much meal prep at actual dinner time. Well, friends, I want to remind you that dinner does not have to be a production. In fact, here's my reality. Both of my kids come home from school in the late afternoon and they are ravenous. They want to eat everything in sight. If you've had children, you know this is true. But what happens then? They end up less hungry at dinner time, and then my husband and I get frustrated for wasting food because they need to eat their dinner, right? Well, here's what I'm learning: dinner can be small, dinner can be incredibly simple. Dinner can be eggs and toast. Dinner can be a turkey sandwich with some veggies on the side. Dinner can be a snack tray of crackers and whatever kinds of meat, cheese, fruit, veg you have on hand. A jar of good soup and some bread, that's dinner. Dinner does not have to be your big meal. There are times where it's just easier to have a nicer breakfast together, or a large lunch, or more snacks throughout the day, and just take it easy at dinner time. I mean, it's better for your health anyway. Like, I've been eating salad for dinner more often than not the last few weeks, and my goodness, do I feel better than when I try to prepare what I believe dinner is supposed to look like. Look, I confess that I do struggle with this ideal vision of some kind of 1950s housewife in my head. But of course, I am living a very different reality. In this season of my life, small, light dinners are working for us. My kids are eating without complaint, and I am not bitter over spending energy making food that ends up wasted. Light, easy dinners. They are what's working for me right now. Next on my list is time blocking my day. So I'm far from perfect on this one, but I have been working on getting better at time blocking my day the evening before. So basically, time blocking is just a fancy way of saying that I plan out my day ahead of time. Are you one of those people who seem to get so much more done on the days that you have a million appointments scheduled? And yet, when you get more open chunks of time, you feel like you never get anything done? Yeah, that's me too. I know a lot of musicians who report the same thing. So, part of my struggle is the possibilities, right? There is a never ending list of projects and activities that I have on my mind at any given time. And I tend to spin out on the overwhelming possibilities when I actually get a moment to accomplish one of them. This is where time blocking has come to rescue me. I can set actual time frames around writing projects and practice time and whatever else enters the picture. And again, when I have been intentional to put it in writing, it is so much easier to accomplish. The most helpful thing, though, about time blocking is it helps me make peace with the limitations of my day. So last year, I wrote a One Thought Thursday e letter about why I was loving Wednesdays. I was teaching a marathon Wednesday schedule last year with lessons straight from 9:15 a.m. all the way through 2:30. And then I had a little break before my evening hours began. But while it was intense and exhausting in its own right, it was also mentally freeing because I knew that I would not be accomplishing anything else that day. I didn't convince myself that I was going to get 3 loads of laundry done and get a head start on my next podcast episode or whatever. I knew that there would be nothing else accomplished besides teaching that day. So, even though I would be quite tired by the end of Wednesday, I also felt more content than any other day because I wasn't battling these unrealistic expectations for how much I was going to achieve that day. Time blocking helps me in a similar way. So, as I plan out how I'm going to spend my time, I am more aware of the limits of that day. So, even though I get frustrated because I want several more hours in my day, this practice is really helping me make peace with the realities of time. I am really feeling more accomplished because my expectations are now grounded in actual time. You may or may not know this about me, but I am constantly dreaming up ways to support you guys, my teacher friends. I have several ideas rolling around in my head that I know are going to help this community. So I get really antsy about finding time to put those things together. At the same time blocking my schedule in this way is helping me remember that, oh, yeah, I work a full time job. And this work that I do supporting teachers is just going to have to conform around that. It helps me realize that I'm not actually a big scatterbrained mess who can't manage to bring her vision to reality. It's that there are actual confines of time that are keeping me from finishing these projects. And, well, speaking of the work I do for teachers, the third thing on my list of what's working for me in this season is absolutely my Patreon community. In case you didn't know, Patreon is this website where creators like me can collect money and monthly support from people like you who appreciate our work. So, in exchange, creators will often offer bonuses to say thank you. So, in creating this community, obviously my goal was to generate some income from this work. I am really committed to keeping this show around 20 minutes or less, which means I do not want to give up valuable airtime for ads and sponsors. It just doesn't fit this vibe. Plus, I have a whole frustration with the lack of authenticity in today's age of influencers, but I'll stay off that soapbox for right now. Anyway, Patreon is how I can make a little bit of money for the multiple hours that I spend on this show every week. But what's incredible is as that community grows, it continues to feed me in ways that I never saw coming. I host these Monday morning power hours for members at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and I will tell you, Starting my week with the same faces every Monday, it is the best thing. Even though we barely chat, because we just hop on Zoom, we state our goal for what project we're working on for 1 hour, and then we mute and get to work. But there is something about having a group of friends that I check in with every single week that is such a gift. The same goes for our monthly Teachers Teaching Teachers meetups. I started those meetings as a way to give back to the support that I am receiving from my friends on Patreon. But I end those monthly sessions feeling like I have learned every bit as much as I hope they have. I have plans to offer a few more bonuses here and there this year, but really, I just have to give credit to those in the Patreon community because they are absolutely something that is working in my life this season. You can get access to the Power Hours for $3 a month, and access to Teachers Teaching Teachers, including all the replays of past sessions, for $6 a month. Even if you don't take advantage of those bonuses that I offer, I would love for you to consider whether or not it's worth $3 for you to listen to this podcast ad free each month. If you want to help support the Patreon, head to the show notes for this episode or patreon.com/BeyondMeasurePodcast. All right, my number 4 thing that is working for me this season: filling out student event applications during lesson time. Maybe that seems like a no brainer, but it is definitely not how I am used to working. It's that time of year, right? Those of us who participate in festivals and competitions and even recitals, we often spend so much time outside of teaching to fill out these applications and recital programs. This year, I watched as my daughter's violin teacher just took a minute or two to complete her festival application during her lesson time. I had already been kicking around this idea in my head, but as I watched how quick and effortless it was for her to do it in the lesson, I knew I needed to try it myself. I don't know about you, but I used to spend many hours filling out student applications for our local festival. It would take even longer because I would end up, needing the year of someone's birthday, or I wouldn't have written down one of their pieces or something like that. And I would be chasing loose ends all evening as I frantically tackled this mountain of registrations. Instead, this year, I just took a few minutes during each student's lesson and I got them all done seamlessly. If I had a question about their address, they were right there and I could just ask them. If I needed the name of the arranger of their piece, I had it right in front of me. Oh, it saved me so much time and so much mental labor. Maybe you have already figured this out, but I am here to say I am officially reformed. I will now be entering all student registrations and even recital program info during the lesson time. I can already feel hours of my life returning to me. So, even if you don't have this issue of student applications, I do encourage you to consider if you can use lesson time more efficiently. What is it that you put off until after the lesson to do? Obviously, we're not going to eliminate all of our outside admin time. That's not the goal. But instead of telling a student that you will text them a link to their video later, maybe you just do it right then. If a parent asks you to email them a reminder about something, maybe that's just something you can do in the lesson itself. In addition to saving time, it also reduces mental clutter, and I am all about that. Okay, last but certainly not least, on my list of what's working right now, this may seem redundant, but for me, it's really not. My number 5 today is teaching. Teaching is really working for me right now. For whatever reason, my anxiety levels have been like off the charts for the last few months. I'm working on that, but seriously, my longest teaching days have been an absolute source of solace for me because in the moment with my students, my mind doesn't have the chance to wander all of the wild places it's prone to go these days. As I survey my life in this way of asking what's working and what's not, I think it's really important to note this great fortune I have to do this work that gives me a sense of security and value and connection and all of those things that teachers get to experience. Now, there are plenty of things we can complain about, sure, but when all is said and done, I typically finish my work days feeling better than when I started. And that, friends, is a gift. Not many of my friends in other professions can say the same thing. So, those are 5 solid things that are working for me in this season of life: light dinners, time blocking, my Patreon community, filling out student applications during their lesson time, and the act of teaching itself. If you would like to get your hands on that free Studio Reflections printable I've mentioned, just head to the show notes for this episode and you can find information on joining the Patreon community there as well. Show notes can be found in your podcast player just by clicking on this episode, or you can head to christinawhitlock.com/episode 157. Okay, as we prepare to part ways, allow me to finish us off with a toast. Studio music teacher friends from all around the world, today I encourage you to take 10 minutes and write your list. What is working for you in this season of life? Think broad strokes here, okay? Like, where is your joy coming from? What feels easy and light? What is invigorating you or inspiring you? Don't forget the flip side of this question. What is not working for you right now? What feels more difficult than it should, or feels like it's draining all your energy these days? Even if you don't think there's anything to do about it, naming those things that are draining you are powerful. And I'm right here rooting for you in all the best ways, my friend. My glass is raised to you. Here, here. All right, if you are curious about the flip side of my list, what is not working for me in this season of life, I will be sharing those responses later this week in my One Thought Thursday e-letter. If you are not subscribed to that email list, make sure you visit christinawhitlock.com/subscribe to get yourself on that list. I love writing those letters each week, by the way, and teachers appear to love getting them. So it's another one of those win-win relationships, friends. Okay, I'm going to skip Teacher Friend of the Week this week because, as I mentioned, this 20-minute time frame is really important to me and I am already over time. So stay tuned for next week because I have a really good one for you. All right, thanks for listening, my friends. I hope something here inspired you today. And I just wish you onward and upward toward naming the things that are working and not working in your life. Take care of yourselves.